So my name is Jackie, and I am a wife. I'm a mother. I also am a singer, depending on who you talk to. I'm an author, and that's always a little scary. We actually have some of the books here, but we don't have very many because the last time I did an event, we sold out of most of them. And of course, hadn't thought another thing about it since then, which was back in March. We're in July. Can I just say, the kids have to go back to school. I cannot homeschool. I will gouge my eyes out. And then I'll jump off a cliff. Not really, but I'll think about it. We have two little boys at home. We have a 12-year-old and an 11-year-old. Zealand is our oldest. And then Soren, he's our youngest. That's Soren with an S. I asked the boys a while back, I was like, hey guys, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so the little one, Soren, he goes, Mom, I want to be a chef when I grow up. I was like, okay, you're going to make some girl very happy. Then I asked our older son, I was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? He goes, Mom, I want to be a giant pair of robotic pants. Okay, we'll see how that goes. So when the kids were born, when our first son was born, I remember he was in my belly. He was, of course it changes the way your body looks, it feels. I was sick all the time, but I just loved, it was instant love. Like I hadn't even met him yet, but I was in love with him. And I remember he grew in my belly, and I knew that little boy, Zealand, was going to have a ministry. I could feel it in my core. I mean, Max Lucado prayed for him while he was in my belly, and he said, God, we just thank you for the ministry of this child. We thank you for this child's ministry. We already knew it was a boy. We didn't know his name was going to be Zealand yet, but this little boy's ministry. So, man, time came. He was born. He was the most beautiful baby I'd ever seen in my life. He was the first guy in my life that I didn't have to make him fall in love with me. It was just instant love. So fast forward, 14 months later, his little brother was born. And thank God that he was not born first, because otherwise he would have been an only child. He cried all the time. It was crazy. So, but he's awesome now. He's such a sweetheart. So at about 19 months old, we started like realizing that Zealand was not kind of meeting the milestones of other kids his age. So typically in those situations, I like to bury my head in the sand. But I couldn't in this situation because it's my kid. So we called a Tennessee Early Intervention, and they came in. They had somebody come to our home, and they did some tests and, tried to figure out, what's going on. So they said he had a pervasive developmental delay. I was like, okay, I can deal with that. He'll catch up. That's good. I can deal with the delay. We're good there. Time went on, and it was time for him to go into kindergarten. So we had to go through a whole new round of testing and just trying to figure out, what's the best way that Zealand, he's going to school, what's the best way to go about this? So I remember them testing him, and they told me a word I'd never heard before. They said, IEP. They said that, and I was like, what does that mean? Individualized Educational Program. Zealand's going to have an IEP because of his developmental delay. I was like, okay, great. Full assistance for my son. This is amazing. So kindergarten year, they rolled out a red carpet. They had somebody who was going to help him and prompt him to do things and stay on task, all that fun stuff. Second grade rolls around. Second grade is, they have to give him an official diagnosis because third grade is when they start testing, right? School testing. So they gave him, they called us into a room. Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez, because I'm married to that handsome guy on the guitar, who also happens to be the lead singer of the band Salvador. Yeah. So they say, Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez, we'd like to have a meeting about Zealand. We're like, okay, we've spoken with your pediatrician. We have all the information in. We've done all the testing and all the assessing. The people from Williamson County School District are also going to be at the meeting, along with the principal, the vice principal, the speech therapist, the occupational therapist, the who's who. People I'd never even met or seen before in my life. We're going to be at this meeting. And I'm going, okay, so I don't know what's going on, but this is good or bad, or he's done something terrible. But they sat us down, and they said, Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez, Zealand is autistic. I was like, you mean artistic? No, he's autistic. I said, no. That can't be the case because, see, I knew in my heart of hearts my son was going to have a ministry. And how can you have a ministry if you can't communicate? Communication is all based, ministry is all based on communication. So no, he's just going to catch up. This is all going on in my head, right? Because, see, I had this vision and this version of Zealand, these dreams for him. And if you tell me he's autistic, then all those dreams are not going to come to pass. So I cried. And I got very, very, very angry. Very angry. I was so mad at God. I said, how dare you? I've been traveling with my parents since I was 9 years old, singing about you in the back of a car doing my schoolwork, homeschooled like a weirdo. And just because I was singing for you, about you, to you, now you're going to tell me that my son's autistic? The son that's supposed to have the ministry, right? My husband and I have given our whole lives to ministry. For you. I was so angry. I was like, the funny thing about that time frame was he never said anything back. Like, he didn't chastise me. He didn't say it's going to be okay. He didn't say a word. The whole time I kept going, why me? Why me? Why me? How dare you? Why me? And after about 6 months, when I changed the posture, because I had to mourn the loss of the vision and the version of Zealand that I had painted in my mind. I'd painted for him. This was just going to be his life. He was going to be a football player, probably super popular, date the cheerleader, be super amazing. And I had to mourn those dreams. And I changed the posture of my question of why me. And I asked the right question. Why not me? Why not me? It was only then that I could feel his presence again, where he picked me up. And it's like he told me, get back up, dust yourself off, and it's time to fight. If you know anything about me, I don't like confrontation. I don't like fighting. I would just prefer to bury my head in the sand once again. But you can't do that when your son can't fight for himself. So, Zealand has been a blessing. He has a lot of superpowers. He has perfect pitch. He can sing better than he can speak. He does a lot of things where he scripts. He can watch a movie once and he can tell you verbatim what line by line by line what the movie said and the entire script of the film. But you can't get him to have a normal conversation with you, like, hey, how are you? How was your day? Because he'll reply with something that doesn't make sense. I wouldn't change Zealand. I wouldn't trade Zealand. I had lots of concepts and dreams for what Zealand would be, what his life would turn out like. I don't know if my son's going to get married. I don't know if he'll have children. I don't know if he's going to have a full life. But God knows. Because see, my son's story is still being written. I bet, like me, you've inherited some things that you would have never chosen. Maybe it's, the student loan debt that your spouse came in with, or that physical trait from your mom that makes it to where no cute pair of skinny jeans ever looks good on you. But the reality is there are just some things that show up in our lives, and we see it as something that really doesn't fit. If it doesn't follow the script and the plan that you thought you were headed for, it's not what you had dreamt with what matches and all the goals that you have or had. You're spot on and you're right. This challenge, the crisis, the conundrum, it's okay to notice that it sticks out like a proverbial sore thumb. Actually, that's the first step. That's not what you planned. That's not what I'd envisioned. That's the best thing you can do. That's the first step, being honest. Being honest enough to recognize and identify what doesn't fit. But of course, that can still be confusing. The struggle is to not get stuck there. What is God trying to show you? What does God see in you that you didn't or can't see in yourself? For me, he saw something I couldn't see in me, and that was strength. He saw patience. I didn't see that in me, but he did, because to raise a son like mine, you have to have that. What challenge are you facing today that you can look back and unbeknownst to you, God has been probably equipping you for this entire time, the entire time of your life that you thought that wasn't fair. I didn't want to go through that, but he was equipping you for this next journey. Can you ask yourself the question, why not me? Change your posture of why me, to why not me? How are you pruning me? How are you're doing something, because you don't just take a day off. Why not me? I always find that people like me, or people just in general, we always want the answers ASAP. But the only answer that can be found is in the living word and through prayer. And the truth is, we may not always know the whys until we reach the other side. We won't get all the answers to the whys in this life. But the key is understanding the difference between our dreams, our plans, and God's calling and God's will, because that is so easy to get those confused. Our plans, our dreams, with God's will and God's calling. Those are very separate things. God is going to interrupt our plans. He's going to interrupt our plans. But listen for his interpretation. Embrace the interruption and listen for his interpretation. I think the coolest thing about the God we serve is that Even when we feel like we're about to lose it, when it feels like David in Psalms, where he is just beside himself. He's like bipolar, manic depressive. He's like, I love you, God. I hate you, God. Why could you? How could you? You left me, but I need you. God is so good and so full of grace that he sticks with you in those times. Because we're his kids. During this whole thing that's been happening since like March, I found it incredible how we were able to use so much time to get back to the basics, trying to find that this is not what we had planned. This didn't make sense at all, but what is God trying to do through each and every one of our lives through this? I spent more time than I ever did just playing board games with my husband and my kids at like 11 in the morning, and then at 2 in the afternoon again the same day. But just focusing on that time. So redeeming that time. And that's what he does. He refreshes, he repurposes, he redeems. Things that we don't understand, trials, he redeems those. Things that, plans that didn't go right, he redeems those. Dreams that didn't come true, he redeems those. He repurposes those. I wrote this song about Zealand and about just how difficult it was in that time to truly trust in God, because I can logically say I trust and know that God loves my son more than me, but it doesn't feel like that. But I know it. But how can I get that to here? So what do? You say it over and over and over again to where it just becomes like a tattoo on you, to know without a shadow of a doubt. And I trust you. Not, I think I trust you. I should trust you. I know I should trust you, but I trust you. I hope that our time here, that you will let God rewrite your story, because after all, He's the author of the greatest story ever told. Sometimes our challenges are by our own making. Sometimes they're just Him pruning us and getting us ready for the next step, for what's in store. But just allow God, walk in obedience, and know that God is in control and He writes the best story ever. Let Him write your story and trust Him with every nuance, every element. Let Him rewrite, refurbish, renew, refresh, and redeem your story.